my name's Aaliyah and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing my summer wrap-up. So I read 17 books this summer. For those of you who are into stats, I have stats for you. So I read 4 young adult books, 12 adult books, and 1 middle grade book. And I also read 6 novellas. So it was kind of like the summer of sci-fi and fantasy and novellas for me. And I had a pretty good last couple of months of reading. I'd say I read a lot of things I really liked. I only had one book that I really hated, so overall it was pretty good. So I'm gonna go through them starting with the first book I read in the summer and then ending with the last book I read right at the end of August. So we might as well just get into it. So the first one I read was The Second Best Haunted Hotel on Mercer Street, and this is a middle grade novel about a little girl who lives in a haunted hotel. And so there's lots of ghosts and it's very sweet. It's not like a spooky book per se. The girl is kind of raised by these ghosts after her mom passes away, and her dad is dealing with pretty bad depression. And I really enjoyed this. It was very sweet, it was very fun. There was spooky ghosts and some friendship and some found family going on, and it was really sweet. So I gave that one 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend that if you like middle grade like me, or if you have kids who you're looking for middle grade books for. I think that one's a really good bet. And then the second book I read was A Dead Djinn in Cairo by P. Djèlí Clark, and this author was the author of the summer for me. I read quite a few of his books. There's only 2 that I haven't read now, and he's a new favorite for me. I really like his stuff. So A Dead Djinn in Cairo is about this fantasy version of Cairo in Egypt, and there's lots of mythical creatures in this city. There's jinn and angels and people who investigate mythical crimes and things like that. So we follow this lady named Fatima, and she is the lead investigator for basically a supernatural, she's basically a detective for supernatural incidents. So if there's anything suspicious going on with magic, she's the one who usually looks into it. And so we follow her on a new case, and this world also has steampunk elements. So there's a steampunk angel, and there's I think there's demons at one point, and it's sapphic, and it's just a fun fantasy time. But I don't want to say too much about these novellas because they are really short. So yeah, but I definitely rated that one 4.5 stars, and it was really good. So I would pretty much check out anything from P. Djèlí Clark. He is a really good writer, and his stories are really fun and fast-paced and action-packed. So yeah, really enjoyed that. And then I read House of Salt and Sorrows. Now, I only have a few books from this summer that I own because most of them I checked out from the library or I listened to them as audiobooks on Hoopla. But House of Salt and Sorrows is one that I own, and this was my least favorite book of the summer. So I gave this 2 stars. I really did not enjoy this. So this is a story of this group of sisters, and they are kind of getting killed off one by one, and one of the sisters is trying to figure out what is happening. And the premise is really good, so that part sounds interesting, but this book is really strange. I got to the end and I was like, what the hell did I just read? So there's kind of a lot of family drama going on in this, because the father of these girls doesn't really believe that his daughters are getting murdered. He kind of just thinks it's stupid accidents, and their mom died not too long ago, a year or 2 ago, and so the girls are still kind of trying to grow up and kind of have to look after themselves because their dad doesn't really do a very good job of it, and they live in this big mansion house by the sea on this cliff. And so a lot of people have said that they really like the vibes and the setting of this book, which I mean, I definitely see that, But there's a lot of confusing things that happen, and there's a lot of like unnecessary drama, and there's like multiple love interest guys. I don't know, there's just a lot of like tropes and stuff, because it's, I mean, this one published a super long time ago. Let me see what the, okay, this is from 2019, so it's not like super old YA, but it's definitely very tropey and dramatic, and that's not really my thing anymore, I guess. So I think a lot of people liked this because they thought it was fun, but personally I thought there was too much drama and the plot was like all over the place, and by the end I was like, what is even happening? Like, this book was trying to be a fantasy, it was trying to be a horror, it was trying to be a retelling. It was too much. It was too many things going on that weren't explained. It wasn't fleshed out. Wasn't a fan. So anyway, 2 stars. Not my thing. This author also has a new book that just came out called Small Favors, and I'm not gonna read that because, yeah, I'm not gonna read that because I don't need any more of the crazy YA drama. So that was like definitely my least favorite book I've read probably in quite a few months, I would say. Then after that I read The House on Vesper Sands, and I loved The House on Vesper Sands. This has been on my radar for a little bit. I know I've seen a couple other booktubers talk about this, but other than that I haven't really heard much about it, and this is not what I thought it was going in. So this is a mystery thriller set in London, and we follow this grumpy detective and this young guy who has kind of dropped out of university, and he gets a letter from his uncle while he's at university saying like, hey, I need your help. And so he comes home and he comes back to London and his uncle is missing. He can't find him, and this girl that he likes is also gone missing, and so he teams up with this detective and they get into this case when they're not really supposed to, and they try and figure out what is happening. And there's also, simultaneously, there's all these women going missing in London, and they're kind of like lower middle class working women that nobody seems to really care about, and so they think all these things may be connected, and so they basically go through London and they're finding these clues and they're kind of talking to people and they're trying to uncover the mystery of why all these people are going missing and what's going on. So it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. The writing was great. The characters were super funny and interesting. It was like dark and kind of twisty, and the London atmosphere was amazing. I was totally here for this. Actually, it's the first book in a kind of detective series, and I don't know when the second book's coming out, but I want it now. I love this book. I really need to buy a copy. The House on Vesper Sands, 5 stars. If you haven't read it yet, you should. And then the next one I read was The City of Brass, which, alright, booktube darling, everybody loves this series, and I thought, you know what, I'll pick it up and see what it's all about. So I listened to the audiobook of this at work, and I really liked the audiobook, so I think if you're looking to get into this, that's a good way to go. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5 stars. The audiobook was really good. I like the characters, I like the world. I don't think I'm as obsessed about it as everybody else is, though. I like the desert fantasy elements. I like that there's djinn, and I like the magic system. I think it's really cool. I really liked Dara in here. Dara Yavahush Afshin. I love that name. I think he's really cool. I am not a huge fan of like the love triangle thing that's kind of going on in here, but overall I would continue with the series. I think it's fun, but it's also like not my new favorite series, if that makes sense. Like, it was good, I liked it, but there's some other books that I like better that are similar. So yeah, 4.5 stars, good, solid. I'll probably read the other books and maybe I'll end up liking those a little bit better than this one. And then the next one I read was To Be Tye Fortunate by Becky Chambers, and this is a sci-fi novella that takes place on a spaceship. It's about this group of people, and they are astronauts, and they are going planet to planet, like surveying the planets and researching like the life forms and the plants and things like that. And it's really interesting. It's a little more science heavy than I thought it would be, but I think it had some really good messages and it was very fun. I listened to this on audio. I like the audiobook, but it is a little bit science heavy and a little dense at times, but I thought it was good. The characters were fun. This is also queer. Yeah, enjoyed that one quite a bit. I definitely want to read some more from Becky Chambers because I like her writing style. And then I also read another novella by P. Djèlí Clark, which was The Haunting of Tramcar 015. Now, this one is in the same world as A Dead Djinn in Cairo. So I think I might do a whole video on this, talking about his like books and novellas and stuff, because A Dead Djinn in Cairo and The Haunting of Tramcar 015 are like the two prequel novellas to his new book, which is A Master of Djinn, which I still need to read, but they're all set in the same world. So I don't think a lot of people know that. I think a lot of people went into Master of Djinn and just thought it was like the beginning of a new series, but if you read the novellas first, the whole world and everything makes a lot of sense prior to going into that new series. So a lot of his stuff is more interconnected than you think. But anyway, so The Haunting of Tramcar 015 was good. I liked A Dead Djinn in Cairo a little bit more, personally. I will say this world is similar to the world of The City of Brass, so if you liked one, you'll probably like the other. The Haunting of Tramcar 015 is about this haunted tram car and these two detective guys who work at the same agency as Fatima from the other novella, and they have to go and investigate the haunting on this tram car and try and get rid of the spirit that is in the car and kind of uncover what's going on with the spirit, how it got there, what's happening, all that. And I liked this one. I think I gave this like 3.5 stars. I didn't like it quite as much as his other stuff that I read this summer, but it was still pretty good, pretty solid. And then I also read The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, and this one was quite a surprise for me. So this is young adult. It is a mystery thriller about this girl who, she is interesting. Her mom was a con artist, and she kind of raised her to be a part of her cons, and essentially to con men out of their money. And so she kind of has all these different identities and these different girls that she kind of had to pretend to be as a kid for these cons that her mom would go on. And so she gets caught up in a bank robbery. She and her ex-boyfriend and her new girlfriend are stuck in this bank, and the bank gets robbed and they get taken hostage, and our main character Nora has to try and work her way out of the situation and might have to revert back to her con artist past. So this book is really good. I gave it like 4.5 to 5 stars. I'm still not totally sure. It was really good. I really recommend this. It's super fast paced. It talks about mental health, it talks about found family, it talks about queerness and different queer relationships. I love Nora's girlfriend in this. She's awesome. There's also endometriosis rep in this. Her girlfriend is on her period while they're in the bank robbery, so that's a thing. It's also like dark and violent and gritty, and it was really good. So if you're in the mood for that, definitely look into this one. It's very good. And then I read The Black God's Drums by P. Djèlí Clark again. Now this novella is not related to the other ones. It's not set in the same world. So this one is set in the South, and there's a lot of talk about like Creole culture and food in this one. And we follow a black main character in like an alternate version of I believe it's Louisiana, and it's got some steampunk elements. There's some things that were like changed historically, so the world is different, and we follow this young black girl who is living on the streets, and she overhears a conversation between some sketchy men on the street, and she thinks that they are planning to steal this magical item. And so she goes kind of on a journey to stop them. And it was really good. It was very fun. I really liked the atmosphere and the world. It was really interesting, really vibrant. Would definitely recommend. I've heard that the author is going to write more in this world, and I'm really stoked for that. This novella is pretty short. Sorry if you can hear car noises outside. But anyways, The Black God's Drums was definitely good. I gave it like 4.5 stars. I would definitely recommend that one. And then I read Hurricane Season. Now this was a time. So if you like dark, queer books, I mean dark, like dark, violent, trigger warnings for everything, for murder, for abortion, for homophobia, death, transphobia, rape, oh man, everything, literally everything. If you can think of a trigger, it's probably in this book. Now I went into this book totally blind. I picked it up on a whim from the library. It is an award-winning book. It sounded interesting to me. It is well, the blurb says it's about a witch who gets murdered in this small town in Mexico, and there's different people who are trying to figure out how she got murdered and who killed her. It's a lot more than that. This is really a story about generational trauma in this small Mexican village, and it's about a lot of different characters. There's a lot of different POVs in this story. Each chapter is told from a different point of view, but the point of view isn't told to you, so you don't know what the person's relationship was to the witch who was murdered until like the end of the chapter. And so the whole story is like you piecing together all these different people's perspectives to understand like the effects of generational trauma and the trauma that's gone on in this town. So there's a lot of queer characters. There's a young girl who gets pregnant. Trigger warnings also for grooming in this. One of the characters is also the mom of another character, and she's a prostitute. There's just a lot of really interesting topics discussed in here. It's very dark, but it's also really like beautiful and captivating. Like, I started this book and I couldn't put it down. So I definitely recommend it, but definitely look up trigger warnings before you go into it, and I would say don't read this if you're not in a good headspace, because it's very grim, but it's also really beautiful and well written, and I loved it. So I gave this 5 stars, but yeah, read at your own risk, I'll say that. And then the next one I read was The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. Now, this brick of a book right here, I have so many thoughts and opinions on this, and I was gonna make a whole video about it, but I've seen a lot of other people posting reviews for this, and I decided not to make my own video. But if you want me to, comment down below and I'll do it. But I gave this 4 stars. It's sapphic. It's like a desert fantasy about colonialism. It's interesting, and I really like the politics and the world building in here. I like the characters. I like the character dynamics. There's also a really cool magic system in here. There's some violence and discussions of war and things like that. It is sapphic. There's 2 main characters that we follow, and it alternates POVs between Terrain and Luca. And Luca is the princess of the colonizing group, and her people have gone to the southern continent and colonized this other place, and it's kind of her job to go to the southern continent and make sure that the rebellion that has started there is eradicated. And she does this because she's trying to prove to her uncle that she is fit to take over the throne, and things go from there. But there is definitely a relationship between Tyrene and Luca. It's like a friendship, it's an alliance, it's not it's very complicated, but the characters in here are really frustrating because they do a lot of dumb stuff. Luca does dumb stuff. Tyrene, oh my god, this book had me on the edge of my seat just like screaming at the characters to stop being stupid. And it was like frustrating and interesting at the same time. So I definitely have thoughts. I would like to read the next books in this series when they come out. But the two main characters are definitely not my favorite. The side characters, I definitely like them a lot better. But anyways, I can talk more in depth about this in another video if you would like. If you want me to do that, comment down below and I will do it for you. But yes, I gave this 4.4, well, I gave this 4 stars. I think the characters could have made better decisions that weren't so incredibly infuriating. And that's pretty much my thought on that. And then after that, I read When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Neve Vo. And this was very fun. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is sapphic. It is following the non-binary cleric from book 1, and the cleric's name is Chi. So we follow Chi on a new adventure, and Chi is like in these snowy mountains, trying to go to another like city, and they get caught in this snowstorm, and there's tigers, and there's woolly mammoths in here, which I really liked, and there's talking animals, there's lots of adventure, and kind of the same themes as novella number 1 in this series, where there's a lot of emphasis on storytelling, which I really liked. So yes, definitely recommend this. Very fun, very well written. It was a good time. Then I also read Raybearer, and I listened to the audiobook of this, which I liked. I will say I don't think I loved this as much as everybody else. I gave this like 4 stars. Really it's more like a 3.5 to 4 star for me. I liked the world building. I liked the politics of this. We follow a young girl who is raised by this mysterious woman called the Lady, and she gets kind of sent on a mission to go to the palace and essentially kill the crown prince. But there's a lot of magic in here. I like the magic system. I thought it was interesting. I like the found family that kind of formed towards the end. I liked all the politics and backstory about the Lady, but I kind of felt like I wasn't a huge fan of the characters in here, and I think that the whole idea in this book of there being this like magical kind of group of people that rule the realm was like not my favorite. It felt like a little bit culty to me, to be honest. Yeah, I think there's parts of Raybearer that felt a little bit culty to me, which is probably pretty controversial. But I just like wasn't as big a fan of it as I wanted to be. So I was a little bit disappointed by that, but it's not a bad book. I really like how a lot of the main characters are Black, and it's like African inspired fantasy, and it's really cool. But yeah, there was that aspect of like the characters all are kind of like in this group, and they have like a magical mental connection called the Ray, and their whole group dynamic felt kind of like a cult to me, which was just kind of weird, and I wasn't a huge fan of that. So it was okay, but not my favorite. And then after that, I read my favorite book of the summer, one of my favorite books of 2021, Summer Suns by Lee Mandello. Now I read an arc of this. It comes out, I think it comes out September 28th, and I loved this book. It's a dark academia gothic story, and it follows this main guy named Andrew and his best friend was found dead, and it was ruled as a suicide, but Andrew doesn't believe it was a suicide, so he ends up going to his friend's, well, essentially house, and trying to uncover what actually happened to his friend, because he thinks his friend might have been murdered. Now, this book is very queer, very dark, very fun, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. So it's set in the South, and Andrew kind of inherits a lot of money and inherits a house from his friend who died, because his friend was very rich. And so he ends up kind of like stepping into his friend's shoes and almost like living the life that his friend lived to try and understand what happened to him and how he died. And he ends up like making friends with the dead guy's old friends and roommate, and things happen. There's a trans character, there's multiple queer men in this book. The main character, Andrew, is kind of discovering his sexuality and also trying to uncover what's going on with the university here in this town, because it's very creepy. The professors are kind of weird, and there's some shady stuff going on there. There's some shady stuff going on with Andrew himself. Andrew can see ghosts, and he's being haunted by the ghost of his dead friend. And this book reminded me a lot of Ninth House. So if you like Ninth House, you need to read Summer Sons, because it's awesome. It's so fun. There's also a lot of like car racing in this. So if that's your thing, that's also in here. Honestly, I was just here for the Southern Gothic vibes and the ghosts and the dark academia. So if you're into that, you need to read this, because it's 10 out of 10, my friend. Loved that. I'm still thinking about it, and I finished it like a month ago. And then after that, I listened to the audiobook for Strange Beasts of China. So thank you to Libro FM for sending me the audiobook arc of this, because I really enjoyed this. This was probably like 4 stars for me. This is kind of a complicated book to talk about, because it's definitely different from anything I've ever read. So it's a book that was translated from Chinese, and it follows this woman who's living in a fictional version of China, where there are magical beasts who live in the city, and each beast kind of has its own like niche place in society, and a lot of them have like kind of certain jobs that they do or things like that. And so this woman is a ex-cryptozoologist, and she has now become a writer, and so she studies these stories about these creatures, and each chapter of the book is about a different species of magical beast that she has encountered, and she talks about them and her experience. And so each chapter feels like its own short story, but the thread that goes through all of them is basically this woman's life. And it's definitely very like magical realist vibes. It kind of has like a dream quality to it. It's definitely kind of like whimsical and interesting, and it also has like commentary on environmental issues and the Chinese government and things like that. So it was definitely interesting, unique book. 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it if you're looking for a translated book to read. Also, Hurricane Season, one of the other books I talked about, was also translated. That was translated from Spanish. So if you want a couple translated books, there you go. I've just been getting into them recently, so I don't know a ton about translated works, but it's definitely something I want to read more of, because they've been pretty good. And then the next one I read was Blood Like Magic. So this was one of my anticipated books for the year. I love this cover. All I really knew is that it was young adult and it was like black girl magic, and it is that. But I gave this like 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was fun. But it was pretty repetitive, and I think it could have been cut down a little bit, because it was pretty big book, pretty chunky, and it didn't really need to be. So we follow this young girl named Voya, and she lives with her family in this house, and her family are witches. But you have to go through this ritual as a teenager to like become a witch. You have to pass your calling. And so she is in that phase of her life where she's about to go into her calling and she's nervous about it. And she has like pretty low self-esteem, so a lot of the book is like her coming into her own. So really it's a coming of age novel. But I liked the family dynamic in here. I liked the discussions about food, because Voya's really into cooking and baking and stuff like that. And I like the magic system in here. There's a lot of like generational magic, which is really cool, and the magic of all of the family members is connected to like their ancestors, so they can go and like kind of have these visions where they speak to like their ancestors and stuff, which is pretty cool. And then the story is also set in a futuristic version of Canada, and there's a lot of technology, so people kind of have like almost like chips behind their eyes so they can like see their social media feeds and stuff, and things like that. There's a lot of like complicated tech stuff going on, and there's also this tech company who is working on like DNA modification, and that also plays a part in the story. So it definitely had some interesting elements, and it was fun. And it's also very queer. There's a couple trans characters and a few queer characters in here, which I liked. But it was kind of repetitive, which I wasn't a big fan of. And then the last book I read this summer was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. So I think a lot of people have read this already. It's the first one in the Murderbot Diary series. It's a novella series, and we follow this robot called Murderbot, who has hacked their government system, and so is now technically like a rogue free agent robot, which is kind of cool. And so this robot is stationed with a group of researchers on a planet, and things go awry, some people get killed, and the robot and these humans have to figure out what's going on this planet, who's trying to kill them, how are they going to get out of the situation. Chaos ensues. But I really like Murderbot as a character. Murderbot reminds me a lot of Deadpool, so if you like Deadpool, you're probably going to like this. I'm definitely going to pick up the other books in the series. It was really fun. I gave it like 4 stars. It was a good time. It was kind of short though. Like I felt like once I got really into the story, it ended. So I was like, oh man, I need the other books. But I don't own them, so I requested them from the library, and hopefully we'll read those soon. But yeah, so those are all the books that I read this summer. I think my favorite one was Summer Suns. My least favorite was House of Salt and Sorrows. I also loved The House on Vesper Sands. I read some great things. I read a lot of queer books. I read a lot of authors I'd never read before. I read some translated stuff. It was a good time. I really had a good time this summer reading. So if you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them down below. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed this. I also leave my Instagram and Twitter link down below. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I have a pretty big Bookstagram account, so if you want to see more reviews and keep up to date with what I'm reading, definitely go check that out. Remember to like and subscribe to this video if you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! That's a car alarm. That's nice. Stop going off. I'm filming!